Welcome back to the class, everyone. Today we've got a bit of a different video. In celebration of the Ahsoka series premiering this week, we are going to be talking about all three iterations of her that are currently in game, and really just how versatile they all really are. So hopefully you're still watching by this point in time, but I do want to say before we get into this, I know the first 2 episodes have come out. This is meant to be a spoiler-free zone, so we will not be talking really about the show at all in its entirety. And also I would ask that everyone refrain from any comments about the show as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into how Ahsoka relates to Galaxy of Heroes. When I originally thought of doing this, I was like, what can we do about Ahsoka? And then the more I dug into it and I started building our usual lists, I just saw that not just Commander Ahsoka is very good and versatile, but the three of them in general just have this tendency to work in a multitude of ways across several different teams, which I think is kind of cool because it does represent Ahsoka in lore very well. Yeah, she has this big part of the Galactic Republic, but we also see her going through and acting with the Rebels, Jedi or otherwise, in between, and also getting to see her do new things even as recent as the Book of Boba Fett and the Mandalorian series. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into what all of them are doing. We are going to be covering all three, so this is going to be a little bit of a mix and match, and I'm going to talk about Ahsoka, the OG Snoke, I guess we'll call her Snips, as well as Kat a little bit at the same time because they do have a few homes. They both work in well together, but other than that, we're going to try to have them all three separate. So first thing I want to talk about is that Turbo QuiGon Gin. So this appears mostly as a normal QuiGon Gin team, but it is actually really stinking strong, and it's one of the teams that can help Qui-Gon stop Bad Batch from countering him. And the secret here partially has to do with Cam and partially has to do with Qui-Gon Jinn's lead, where if you give this team essentially enough modding in speed on top of the 30 they get from here and the 30 they get from here, this team just ends up blowing everyone up. And one of the reasons why Ahsoka is really nice here, not only does she add just some normal benefits within damage and cleanses and stuff like that, but she's going to constantly assist on specials, being able to dispel whatever taunts are out there. So if they do have pretty consistent taunts, they keep getting it back, she can keep ripping that off, and if they're going not only first, that's great, but they're also going to end up doing more damage. So being able to hit who they want outside of just Jedi Anakin's big AoE can be very beneficial. And I will say it's nice that she has this unique here where she gets all these bonuses and they're doubled when she has critical hit immunity. So she gets all the speed, max health, evasion, critical chance, all that good stuff. And because Jedi Anakin is present, she will be able to get crit immunity on her own, really without any other source on the battlefield because of how that special works. So great defensive team, especially if you're able to give it enough speed that they can go before a Bad Batch. And you can do that, by the way. You do need Cam, but any Bad Batch Echo will not be able to get ahead of this if you give them enough speed overall. And you don't need to give it to everyone. You just have to give it to a few members. They can go in. Cam, for example, can go and land the armor shred, immediately dispel on Ahsoka. Jedi Anakin, you can use his big hit. Qui-Gon calls someone to his assist, and before you know it, several important members of the enemy team are dead. Next up is going to be General Skywalker, and this is, we're kind of just mentioning it to mention it. I really don't like this. There are going to be very few rosters out there that can genuinely benefit from it, but I will say Ahsoka does get to fit into here pretty well because the 501st leadership doesn't really require you to be a clone. You just have to be a 501st, and she does have that tag, which makes her quite useful here. And then on top of that, Commander Rex in his rework, or just Rex, I guess, does give critical hit immunity to Ahsoka suit. Just because Jedi Anakin isn't present and there isn't a normal way to gain critical hit immunity, he can provide that to her. The main reason I don't like this is because any ally here really should be a clone, so they can specifically synergize with 5's tactical awareness, where when he dies, he can give all the stats to the rest of the characters, assuming another clone was defeated in the process. She's not ideal here, but depending on what you're doing in your roster, when you're trying to work up maybe towards some legendary characters where Echo or whatever isn't required and you end up doing these, you can slot her in there if she's not needed elsewhere. But again, her kind of whole game is versatile. I actually did this in 3v3 just in my last match, and the reason why is because these three clones right here are very useful on their own, and then Gas only really needs the bare minimum to take out the really strong Tusken Kron with Chieftain and Warrior, as well as the Raider Kron there. So those are the main two Ahsoka comps we're going to talk about. Next up is going to be JMK himself. This is the ultimate culmination, really. You have to kind of bend your roster in some weird ways to make any of these other teams out there work, and that's fine. A lot of people do that depending on what they have or really what they don't have. But this is the ultimate place that it ends up. We're not going to spend a lot of time here because this is the Galactic Legend team. I guess one thing we will say, since we don't have Rex or Jedi Anakin here, there is still a way for her to get critical hit immunity to get all those juicy bonuses that we already talked about, and that is going to be through Kenobi's unique here. Whenever another ally is critically hit, they gain critical hit immunity. So not only does she get that nice bonus on top of it, but she also gets to have a consistent source of it, maybe more consistent than the other two. The only issue is JMK also just kind of prevents crits in general. But overall, Ahsoka's purpose here, this isn't really about Ahsoka. This is more about JMK, because what JMK wants is he wants someone to be constantly assisting at a turn, because when they do that, you gain ultimate charge and, well, really just basic in general, but whenever they use a basic, but they also get to heal their health and protection whenever someone is assisting. And whenever she assists, they will also call in the weakest character, which just synergizes with the whole team very, very well. And now it is important that we start to talk about Commander Ahsoka here. We won't talk about her too much, but basically she makes it so the JMK doesn't get countered by some really kind of, I guess, weaker teams like the General Skywalker team that is not a Galactic Legend. It beats us quite handily if she's not on the team, because her Force Sleep just immediately annihilates someone. And then on top of that, she adds a lot of nice stat gains that also help. So able to shut down those few counters like Bad Batch and Gas, and even a lot of the other Galactic Legends start to stand a much better shot without Cap present. Like C, you end up being able to take in a few cheaper C counters. Next up is going to be Ahsoka, and Ahsoka is going to be Padme. Padme is really just a cheaper version of the JMK team that obviously isn't quite as good due to the fact that you're not really functioning with the Galactic Legend, but they work very well here. Commander Ahsoka Tano really doesn't need to be on a JMK team to function well. We're going to talk about this more here in a second, but she just wants to be on a team where there's specifically a Galactic Republic or Scoundrel ally. I know that she has light side unaligned Force user synergy, but when you start to like dig into the nitty gritty of her kit, it becomes a pain in the butt if you don't have at least one Galactic Republic or Scoundrel ally active, because she can't spread Sheen to them, or Xian, however this is pronounced. And then if you can't spread that, you don't get the assist out of turn. If you don't get the assist out of turn, then you don't get this cooldown reduced. You don't get all the extra damage. So she is just very plug and play for light side in general, but she's mostly a Scoundrel and a Galactic Republic more than she is a genuine oof, although she can function in that capacity. Well, adding her to this team is just really nice, because when you leave Anakin over with QuiGon Jin, one of the things that Padme can struggle with is killing anything out there that is immune to max health damage, of which there's quite a bit right now. And when you add Katin, you not only do you get an insta-kill, which is nice, but even if there's any allies or any enemies left over after you use the insta-kill on that one really important character, maybe like Crew, you do get to have Armor Shred, which you can eventually reduce their defense to 0, and at that point, even if they are immune to max health damage, if they have no defense, you can typically eventually take them down, especially with the stacking damage nature of this attack. Ahsoka also still pairs really well here for the GK reason. And one of the other things that it's nice, and the reason why we're actually not talking just about a generic Jedi for Ahsoka, not only do you typically lose all these bonuses, but the one thing Ahsoka really wants the most, if the ally leader is Galactic Republic, Ahsoka is called to assist whenever another Galactic Republic ally uses a special ability. This becomes a little bit important that you need to have a Padme or a JMK or a Qui-Gon or a Gas in that leadership spot for her really to function at all. I mean, if she's in a normal Jedi team, I guess she's just a random Dispel, but I guess at that point, so was Plo Koon. There's a lot of Jedis with Dispels on basics. She doesn't. That's really not where most of her value is. So, closing in on normal Ahsoka, or OG Ahsoka, Snips, whatever we want to call her, we're gonna move into some of the really weird cat teams that most people probably don't use, but depending on how you want to split up your roster, these could be things to take advantage of. If you're able to split off JMK from this to take out maybe another Galactic Legend, like let's say Lord Vader, you just throw Cam in with JMK, he can beat Lord Vader without Cat, or maybe you want to beat SLKR. I wouldn't recommend putting on defense for reasons previously explained, but yeah, Ahsoka can just work in all of these cases. So if we look on the Scoundrel team here, we looked before that Xian, when she applies it to another ally whenever they assist at a turn, it does reduce her cooldowns, which gets her closer to an Annihilate because she doesn't have JMK to just immediately remove the cooldowns for that, and it all as well as going to stack her damage. And the one nice thing about putting her here, not only does she end up with all the nice Scoundrel bonuses, but she's also going to be spreading, and this is really what makes her kit so broken. She has 50% offense, critical damage, and if another light side on the line forces Galactic Republic Scoundrel ally is present, she also has 50% health and defense and shares all these bonuses with all her light side allies. So you really start to mess with a lot of things when you just give a team 50% offense, crit damage, health, and protection. For example, one of the things that I really like to use to counter dash is QuiGon Gin. You don't get to just blow up Vandor Chewbacca if the team, number one, has a ticking time bomb on it, and number two, has 50% extra health on their Vandor. He's already a pain to kill with everything that he's doing and reducing damage and just being naturally tanky, and there's also a tank in the team, but you add that extra oomph on top of it, and it just becomes a huge pain in the butt to be able to take down. Not to mention, she hits multiple times, which just synergizes really well with dash, because whenever you have multiple critical hits and you get more turn meter for that. Again, the insta kill is never bad, and the Shin even pairs well with a lot of different scoundrels that have counter chance. L3 can have counter chance. I don't really like putting Shin on L3 though, just because she takes so many turns, she ends up dropping it very quickly. One of the ones that's really dirty to put it on is actually Enfys Nest, because typically Enfys Nest is ran slower, so she's always going to end up having it because she doesn't take enough turns to usually drop it. She has an 80% counter chance, so she is going to be assisting that turn whenever there's an AoE or whenever anyone decides to attack her, which I don't know why they would, but AI does certain things for I don't know why, really reasons. But that can end up getting you that cooldown off faster to be able to get your Annihilate out and take out the enemy team. Next up is going to be a little bit weirder, and that's going to be CLS. This one isn't seen that much, but again, if you're trying to split up your teams in a way to do something different, you're trying to theorycraft, you're going to put 3PO on a Jedi Training Raid team, or maybe a sortie team, I don't know. 3PO is also pretty versatile. And you put Commander Ahsoka Tano here, this gets pretty silly really fast. The only like impressive thing I've seen this do, but it is very impressive, is kill SLKR, because again, when you add 50% raw offense onto this team after everything that is already going on between CLS's lead, Chewbacca's special right here, then you can just kill Hux in the opening ball, and as soon as Hux is dead, they can't stop turn meter gain anymore, and this whole team just runs rampant, taking down the SLKR team. Lobster starts to interrupt, he uses his AoE a bunch, you counter it, not only do you gain turn meter, but you end up doing more damage. Cat typically doesn't take a turn because she doesn't get a lot of turn meter when things are resisted, really doesn't get any, and that ends up causing other issues for SLKR, but at the end of the day, she's just there for all of these boosts. One of the other nice things is, though, she can put Shan on a Scoundrel, of which Chewbacca is, and then every single time he's assisting at a turn for your Han or your CLS, assuming they both have guard, he's going to be reducing that cooldown so that eventually when she does get a turn, and maybe Crew's there being really annoying, you can get the hit, or if you just need a really big hit on SLKR himself to take him out, that's also an option. It might be also viable on defense, probably not nearly as much. Really, they need a cleanse to have any shot at Grievous, and Ahsoka doesn't really supply that much. And this one, again, this is very similar to the gas comp. Almost nobody out there is going to use this, but I figured it was worth a mention. This was an older comp that used to be a lot better before they nerfed the whole defense interaction years ago. Jedi Knight Luke's leadership used to ignore defense when they got his special Heroes Arrive buff, or rather Jedi Will's buff from Heroes Arise. And what it would do is you would end up getting to ignore defense, and then you would get the 50% crit damage in offense as well, because all you have to do to share those bonuses is put one random GR Jedi on the team. Ayla's a great option because, again, she can attack out of turn, which is one of the really nice things. She can counter a lot. Shakti was another option. That was the option that I ran into one time, and the team just completely tore me apart because you're getting so many bonuses on top of Jedi Luke's lead, as well as adding everything Commander Ahsoka gains. It doesn't feel like the best fit though, because she doesn't get to reduce the cooldowns of Heroes Arise, and she also doesn't get to like assist at all because she's not a Jedi. So that, again, not exactly the perfect comp out there. But again, depending on what you're doing with your roster, whatever you're trying, you can do some sneaky things with this. Now, moving on to last but certainly not least is going to be Fulcrum. So she's not nearly as versatile as the first two variations of Ahsoka, but she still can be used in quite a few places. The first of which is going to be Sear, and this is going to be the most common comp that you're going to want to use in Grand Arena, or really anywhere outside of Territory Wars, because there's a Territory Wars specific Omicron that changes that interaction. But when Sear first came out, it became really obvious that you wanted to use Ahsoka, Tano, Fulcrum. Not just because, yeah, they're unaligned Force users, and that's great. Not only does Sear add a lot specifically to unaligned Force users, but she also gives a ton of buffs, Cal does as well, that end up leaving Fulcrum with a really nice big hit using the Whirlwind, where she gets to take every single one of her buffs that is dispelled off of herself and use it against her enemy for damage. It also is really nice that she gets to ignore 50% armor, essentially. What that ends up doing in the modern game is a lot more than it used to because of the amount of defense that's running rampant, not just in kits, but also in datacrons. One thing that's kind of sneaky they did specifically for this interaction to kind of pair Sear and Ahsoka up is if you go down to Omicron and you look at this specific line, for each instance of damage any unaligned Force user ally deals to an enemy, they gain 10% offense, stacking for 2 turns. And again, looking at Fulcrum's kit, this ends up giving her a ton of offense because when she goes to use Whirlwind, she is going to be hitting a ton because she can get, I don't know, somewhere around 8 to 10 buffs on herself. And if she's going to be dispelling each one of those, and each one of those becomes a new hit, and she's getting to hit 8 or 10 times, then on top of that, she's going to be gaining 80 to 100% offense for the next 2 turns. So the whole thing just pairs really well for a final product, and it's going to get even better when Malicos comes out here pretty soon. The other main use that you can use for Fulcrum, and this is specific to TW, if you do give her TW Omicron, they kind of, it's really weird that they did this with her, but they intended for her to kind of be a Territory Wars Wampa, in the sense that she is going to be able to solo entire other teams. And it's, again, it's cool kind of how they did it. They gave her a bunch of defense, max health protection. They gave her a permakill. They gave her an ignore taunt. So they really tried to allow her to be able to take out a lot of versatile things. She shakes off not only just shakes off the debuffs now, but she converts them into more buffs for herself so that she can do more damage through the abilities that we've already talked about. And what's even more deadly right now isn't necessarily her on her own. While that is great, you can take down some pretty high level comps if you have your modding right. But she can even be used in what is essentially a super unaligned Force user team. And this thing is just deadly right now. This is a higher end Territory War team. It is very expensive, but it is very good. So obviously you have Rey in the leader spot. Every single character here is an unaligned Force user. And because of Cal's TW Omicron, he can allow all of Ahsoka's solo Omicron effects to be active in a full squad. So now, if you put this team down, not only do you have to worry about Rey, not only do you have to worry about Ben, not only do you have to worry about JTR, but you have to worry about Fulcrum being an absolute menace, ignoring taunt, stopping revives, and every single other thing she does. So now the team has 3 significant sources of damage, and then I guess Cal and JTR are both being super annoying on top of all of that. So that is going to conclude our video today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoy Ahsoka in general, but also the series that is currently out. I would tell you to check it out on Disney Plus, but I'm not sponsored, so do as you please. Until the next time, stay awesome.